Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started. The Sedona Fire District's May meeting is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
There are 13 police officers and 5 firefighters that lost their life to the line of duty since our last meeting.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we've got a lot of ground to cover in this meeting. Chief Troutwine, was there any updates with COVID and masks that you want to make, any statements before we start, or it is business as usual?
Yeah, and I might even have Chief Paul comment briefly, but the basic change that came down from CDC is that if you are fully vaccinated, that, and I believe after your 2-week waiting period post-vac, your second vaccination, that then the mask protocol would change where you wouldn't be required to wear that, but all our other protocols are the same and intact. Am I being accurate there, Chief Boyle?
Yes, sir, you captured it. And I think, for the agency, what we decided was the default position is still the same policy. However, the exception is, for the reasons that the chief stated, then you can choose to go unmasked, or you can choose to continue to wear your mask if you prefer.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we're just requiring that you put on file with our EMS chief, all our employees, that they have on file with EMS chief their card if they did choose the vaccination.
Okay, so until we put our card on file that we've been vaccinated, it's mask as usual. Okay, thank you. Okay, looking at our agenda for this evening, our first item on the agenda is organizational meeting of the fire board. Discussion, possible action. This is an issue with board member Joy Michelle Moore, and she is on Zoom. And with that, Joy, would you like to say a few words?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know, the public, as well as the balance of the Sedona Fire District, that for family reasons, I've had to move away out of the state, and this will be my last board meeting, and we'll discuss the details of that later, but I just wanted to let everybody know that in the 2 terms that I've served, even though this one's not full, I have had a great deal of joy and passion and gratefulness to be part of the Sedona Fire family. We have grown since I've been around, 2004, and we're going to continue to grow and just continue to be the best fire district that I know. We have great people, and I'm just blessed to have been a part of it, and I just want to thank everybody for that. And I'm not sure if that's what you wanted me to say, but that's what I wanted to say. And I'm very sad to be leaving. It's just family obligations have dictated my change.
Well, Joy, that's fully understandable. We're going to have a huge hole to fill behind you because you were active with us and a big part of the Sedona Fire District Governing Board, not only in this term, but in the previous terms that you did serve. So, as I understand it, this is your resignation as of this moment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Don't want to do it, but I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing by the district and stepping down at this time.
Okay, I totally understand and fully respect your decision. I'm sure it was not an easy one to make. I'd like to open it up to the rest of the board for comments. Al, would you like to start out with any comments for Joy, towards Joy?
I was shocked when I heard that you had to move from Sedona and as a result leave the fire board, because I have such fond memories of my initial meetings with you back when the campaign was just getting going. And I agree with what Dave said. You've got big shoes that'll be hard to fill, because you have more heart and soul, and you seem to have an innate and natural knowledge of the way the fire district operates down to the detail level, almost like you had been a fireman. And I always admired that, and figured that maybe someday it would rub off a little bit on me. So I will miss you, Joy.
Thank you, Al. Very sweet.
Janet?
Hi, Joy. I didn't know you long, but I was looking forward to learning the ropes from you. Since I am a brand new board member, so I will miss the opportunity, and I hope your new life goes well.
Thank you so much, Shane. I appreciate it. You and your husband, both look very good to me.
Okay. Gene?
Joy, they say that when one door closes, another one opens, and I think you'll find that to be true. Although I know you'll miss us all, and we as well will miss you. So I wish you well, and whatever path or doorways you seek are provided for you. And I would just say, come back and visit.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Gene. You've been very, very kind to me for the entire time, especially during the campaign. And I thank you for everything that you've ever said to me and everything that you've ever given me with this district and as a board member. I thank you.
You're welcome, Joy. Godspeed.
And again, Joy, I think you're really going to enjoy your new life with your family on a different coast, and enjoy every minute of it, because time flies by really fast. So
Yes.
good luck.
Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it.
All righty. So with that said, the board has a duty to do, and that is to make a motion to accept the resignation of Joy Michelle Moore from the Sedona Fire District's governing board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And that date will be today's date at this time. There isn't any further discussion. All members in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Joy, congratulations. Good luck in your new life, and enjoy those grandbabies.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Thanks.
Oh, excuse me, Chief?
Joy, don't run away yet. If Mr. Chair, if you allow me to have the floor, I have a couple comments, and then I do want to defer to our executive staff that are both divisions, assistant, and our directors are here. I would like to give them an opportunity to share their appreciation to you, Joy. So, and first of all, I want to tell you, thank you for your service and commitment to this organization. You spent a lot of time, a lot of commitment, and definitely served from your heart. On a personal level, man, you are so passionate and supportive of this district that I know personally I will miss that. My wife will miss that. But I know staff and our firefighters will, to have a board member that's ready to act, ready to serve, to get our firefighters everything they need to carry out the mission of this community. So, man, my hat goes off to you for that. It's an example to us. We appreciate that. So on behalf of our firefighters and staff, I do want to extend my gratitude to you for that service commitment and that heartfelt support. And also just let me know before I divert to my executives that we do have a gift on order for you, and it's not quite done yet because, don't worry, it's not like a car or anything. It's not quite done yet because this went so rapidly. And then also we have a brick, as we speak, being etched with your name and service dates that we put under the flagpole, as is tradition for all our board members that have served graciously to this district. So I want to defer to our exec, Heidi, our Director of Admin, if you'd like to make a couple comments.
Had a mic error. Joy, you and I worked on a couple of difficult issues together during this service time, and I really appreciate your professionalism and your dedication to help to make things right and to work with us through processes, and your commitment to the crews and to the board and to the community is well noted. So thank you so much for your service, and we look forward to seeing you when you come to visit.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot.
And by our Director of Finance, of course, is with us, Dave, our surrogate member.
Joy, it's been a pleasure to work with, a lot of board members across the state, and I will say, not a lot have the passion and drive for the commitment to the organization that you do. So good luck.
Thank you, Gabe. You've been a blast to hang out with, and you've been very professional and very good at what you do, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Assistant Chief Oil.
Joy, it's my opinion that fire board service is one of the toughest volunteer roles that someone can fill, and you performed it with dedication and tenacity. I believe that you have distinguished yourself throughout the past 2 terms as a judicious steward of the organization, and you never flinched when we had to deal with difficult decisions. And when I was fire chief, I had the opportunity to have one-on-ones with you in some complex situations, and in each one of those, you performed, and I appreciate what you had to offer in those situations, and you will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Coyle. Thank you.
Division Chief Azulis.
Hey, Joey, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Hey, Ed.
Hey, I got a lot to say, but I won't, but for the purpose of time, but you've been, everybody's used the word passion. I'd call you a battle buddy. You've just been a solid supporter of our organization through some pretty great times and some pretty rough times. And, your passion for Station 6, you saw the future with our leadership at the time, and look what it's done to benefit us now. And I appreciate what you've done for us, and I'm super excited for your future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been great working with you throughout the past with 2 terms, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it's been. But thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
Go ahead. Finally, Division Chief Davis.
Joy, it's been a pleasure having you on the board. I appreciate the fact that whenever you had any questions, you never hesitated to give me a call, ask questions. Having served on multiple boards myself, I know the time commitment that it takes to prepare for meetings, to be involved in the organization, and you are to be commended for taking that time and to help your commitment to help make Sedona Fire District and the community of Sedona a better place.
Oh, thank you, John. I appreciate it so much. It's
Thank
been great
you.
working with you and Carla. It's been really great.
Thank you.
So Joy, and don't forget, when you are in town, if you need a place to stay, you are always have the Troutline House to stay in. I want to let you know that, okay?
Thank you.
All right, so yes, thanks for indulging us to let staff really bless you, because you've been a great support. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And send Barb my love. And thank you, everybody. I appreciate all of you. And thank you for everything you've ever done for me.
Thanks again, Joy. We're going to miss you. And Bill, I know you've worked quite a bit with Bill. He's sitting right here. Would you like to say a few words?
I would. Testing. Is this working? Joy, can
Is
you
this
hear
thing
me?
on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Hey, we've grown up together here at Sedona Fire District. You've been on the board as long as I can remember, and I certainly appreciate you hanging in there with the rest of us during the hard years and came out on the other end shining. Thank you so much for your leadership and your friendship over the years. I don't remember the last time I had a board that you weren't there, and that means a lot to me. Thanks for all you brought to the table. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Your friendship has meant a lot to me, and your professionalism and everything you've done since I've been on the board has been very important. Thank you.
See you soon.
Okay, everyone take care. Mwah.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Okay, that leads us to our next order of business, and that is filling that vacancy, at least attempting to fill the vacancy. At this point, I would like to ask, is there anyone who would like to volunteer for the position of clerk? before they're appointed or selected and voted on. You get one chance.
Is this anything like the Army?
Yeah. We'll all step back and Gene will be left standing there. Oh, did I let the cat out of the bag?
I'll serve in any capacity you wish.
Okay, was there anybody else who would like to compete with that?
I couldn't compete with Gene ever.
Okay.
Oh, I've got him fooled.
Okay, with that, Janet?
No, thank you. I'm too new to this.
Okay.
Before you move forward,
I'm-
I owe an apology to the board and to the members here and so on and so forth. I did not anticipate that on Tuesday.
Traffic.
On Tuesday. So I'll let you paint a picture of how I got here, so pardon.
Okay. With that said, I'd like to motion to elect Gene McCarthy as the new board clerk. And this will serve, well, even though we do get a new member down the road, that new member may not be the board clerk. So at this point in time, a motion be made for the selection of Gene McCarthy as the new Sedona Fire District Governing Board clerk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Al?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, Gene McCarthy, you are the new board clerk,
Thank you,
serving as
sir.
my right-hand
Thank you,
man.
sir. I'll be sure to put that on my resume.
Thank you very much. So, again, a big hole to fill. Our attempt to do that is with Gene McCarthy, and I have no doubt that he will step in and perform admirably, which leads us to our next item on the agenda, and that is executive session. Possible vote to go into executive session pursuant to ARS 38431.03A5 in reference to discussion or consultations with the designated representatives of the public body in order to consider its position and instruct its representatives regarding negotiations with employee organizations regarding the district's MOU, and ARS 38431.03A3 for legal advice regarding the same, ARS 38431.03A4 for instructions to legal counsel regarding those negotiations and the terms of the MOU. This also is first of all, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you also want to include items B and C?
Yes.
Back out?
Yes, that's correct. They need to be added in there. So that's the first part of the motion. This will include 3690, the Firefighters Association and the ASEA civilian memberships MOU. Also, possible vote to go into executive session pursuant to ARS 38431.03A3 for legal advice regarding a waiver of conflict with Yavapai County, and ARS 38431.03A4 for instructions to legal counsel regarding the same. And finally, possible vote to go into executive session for legal advice pursuant to ARS 38431.03A3 and possible instructions to legal counsel pursuant to ARS 38431.03A4 in regards to the Sedona Fire District's lease with the Sedona Oak Creek Airport Authority. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are now in executive session. Are you going upstairs to your office or somewhere else?
We're going to the training room, right, Terry?
You ready? Okay. Okay, we are back in public session. As I review the agenda, normally we would act on those items discussed in executive session. In this occasion, we're going to move the budget workshop up one notch ahead of any of those possible actions from executive sessions so that we can have the proper flow of the workshop before any decisions are to be made. So with that said, at this point on the agenda, item number 5 is the budget workshop. And I believe, Gabe, you're giving your presentation on that, or Chief, are you going to open it up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Board. So I'd like to make some introductory comments, and I'll turn it over to Gabe, and he'll go over the general information based on all the subsequent workshops. So, I'd like to reiterate our staff goal here, our overall goal again, is one, to provide a budget accurate to the district's needs. 2, to be as effective and efficient as possible from a fiduciary standpoint. 3, to support the CAP district needs in the future. 4, to continue to develop and implement initiatives to manage the budget. And 5, to integrate our strategic plan with our budget. So, in the subsequent budget workshops, I've iterated those goals over and over and over, so we start to get comfortable and understand and hear them. But I believe the draft budget before you does align with those goals. So just a couple of bullet points on the process. Staff worked very hard to further refine this budget from last month, our last board workshop, or this workshop tonight. A couple of things we're going to see added are the draft fee schedule. We talked about that. We put that in front of the board where you can look at that. We evaluated all the areas in that fee schedule, and the areas that we updated, these were largely in the CRR division, and that's because we have not really updated any of that for about 3 years. So we had CRR and finance go to that, so I think we made some appropriate adjustments there. Also, you have the draft pay schedule. That pay schedule does align with the MOU updates and those meet and confer updates that we've discussed prior to this. And then also, you'll see in the draft budget, what I iterated, where we're at is from last year's budget, this draft budget proposes a $940,000 increase, which is a 5% increase. And also, you'll note on the levy that last year, or this current fiscal year, is $2.47. And this fiscal 22 proposal takes it up 1 cent to $2.48. So, what the things staff are going to continue to do when we talk about managing the budget, we're going to continue to evaluate each line item to make sure it reflects the needs. We're going to continue to pursue grant opportunities. We're going to all continue to look at how we deploy and operate for maximum effectiveness and efficiency. And we're also going to continue to strive to work within our budgetary lines that are approved. And I think the last several fiscal years, we've accomplished that and done a very good job. Challenges. Well, we're always going to be challenged by the typical CPI and inflationary increases. Of course, that's challenging everywhere in the country, not just here. In addition to our annual wage and benefit increases, including retirement, with all the full roll-up personnel costs. So we know that the majority of our budget is always going to be that wage benefit, those personnel costs. People, although they are the greatest resource we have, they're also the most expensive component, keep within our market value, as we've discussed earlier. So we earlier presented the meet and confer proposals before you, and then also we presented the proposal last budget workshop on Oak Creek Canyon staffing. So that's still within this budget. So I want to kick it over to Gage and get the highlights, and then obviously questions and direction.
All right, thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Last week, you were sent the complete detailed budget. So really today, what I intend to do, as soon as this updates, is go over just where we're at in the budget process, overview of our revenues and expenditures for next year, discuss the capital plan, and then the budget projections. And then as far as the workshop, it'll be then just some discussion and direction from the board. And then obviously later on in the agenda, we are actually asking for tentative adoption. So on the schedule, we're at the May board workshop where we will ask for tentative adoption tonight. What that means is after the board tentatively adopts, we will then post for a minimum of 20 days And then at the June board meeting, ask the board for final adoption. Couple things there is once the board tentatively adopts, we can always lower the budget before final adoption. We can't increase the budget. So if we want to increase the budget, we have to re-tentatively adopt and repost for 20 days, but there can always be decreases between tentative and final adoption. Not much has changed. Well, actually, take real quick here, the budget book that you guys all received is broken up into a couple different sections. We obviously have our operating budget. We have a breakdown of all of our revenues, our expenses by division, as well as the 10-year projections, and the full detailed capital plan. So obviously, I'm not going to have all of that stuff up on the slides here, but that was all provided to you in your budget book. Any questions on the budget book itself before I go into the actual budget numbers?
Gabe, as you give your presentation, are you going to be following page by page so we can kind of track?
There will be some pages, and I'll have those reflected here in the PowerPoint so you can reference the pages that I'm discussing as well. So, as you can see there, revenue on page 3. So, as been discussed and presented, we did see an assessed value increase of 5.44%. The budget before you is a proposed tax rate of $2.48, which is down slightly from what we originally looked at. I think it's important to note and kind of follow up what Chief mentioned is, staff has been working, diligently to bring forward the most responsible budget they can while still meeting the needs of the community operationally. And, we were looking originally at over $1 million increase, and that number is down to $940,000 in the budget before you. So we are seeing a proposed tax rate of $2.48. FDOT is still holding at $404,000. We may get some updated numbers from Yavapai County here within the next couple of days. Once I get those, depending on what they look like, we'll either update the number in the budget or just go with the estimated number we had in there if there's not a huge variance. Non-levy revenues, you'll see, we've got ambulance at $2.1 million, communications rents at $211,000, wildland at $500,000, interest income of $75,000. Miscellaneous income is up to $170,000. That's those community risk reduction revenue for permits and plan reviews, training, donations, things like that. On the expenditures, which are on page 4 through 6, not a lot of changes from what's been presented over the last couple of months. I will again highlight that we are looking at a COLA for all staff of 1.3%. The budget does propose a step increase for all eligible personnel. The addition of 3 full-time firefighters to the Canyon, as well as based on the MOU negotiations, we had a placeholder in there last month of $200,000, and that number actually came in at $187,000, and that's what's in this budget document here. No other changes to any other categories have been made from what was previously presented to the board. There was some reductions, however, in the communication and IT on when we're looking at some of our actual outlay on repairs and maintenance and professional services related to IT, bringing that more down in line with what we're actually been using and experiencing, as well as some refinement on some of our software costs.
Gabe, if I may,
Yes, please ask questions as we go through.
Okay, as we go through these, what I key off on is some of these things that have the greatest percentage of variable, greatest percentage of increase, and ask myself why. If I look at vehicles and equipment, for example, as you go on page 5 of this document, it talks about we went from 17.7 to 31.369 for a 77% increase. Now, is that because we're buying an apparatus? We're leasing an apparatus.
Correct.
And that's how that reflects there.
Correct. That, if you remember, one of the staff vehicles we're actually, I believe it was the BC unit that we're looking at. We're unable to get the vehicle through other means, and so we went through Enterprise for a lease of that vehicle, and that's reflective of that increase there on that line.
Okay. And also, as I look at managerial expenses, in here we talk about elections. It's been removed from the 2022 budget because it's a non-election year.
Correct, yes.
But is it to our advantage to perhaps, if we know we're going to have an election every other year, that you put half of it in there so it doesn't make an impact? Is it nominal where it's not going to make that big a difference?
Right, it's one of those line items that's kind of nominal in material really to our budget, so we don't need to, it's not a large enough dollar amount, like when we talk about capital, that we want to essentially budget a percentage of it every year.
Okay.
We're able to just put it into the budget in the years that we incur that expense.
And on here, and for the rest of you guys, jump in there anytime you want. Debt service.
Yes.
It actually dropped quite a bit, but explain to me exactly the definition of what is debt service?
So what we throw into the line item for debt service is like lease purchase payments on facilities and things like that. So for example, historically we had lease purchases for cardiac monitors, gurney, I believe, and then the station. Now all we have is the station.
Mm-hmm. And we're getting to a point there, even with that station, we might just as soon pay that thing off as we get closer to the end game here on this.
We could look at that, yes, exactly. Especially as we look at starting construction on other stations, we may want to look at maybe paying that off earlier.
Okay.
Or just carrying that. Under the next section,
I'm sorry, can I inject a point of clarification? Just certainly quickly back to the 3 full firefighters to staff the canyon. We're not increasing, we're not hiring 3 fresh firefighters. Remember, we're converting the drop. We won't travel around to staying at that station. So just a point of clarification. I didn't want it to come up that, oh yeah, we're going to add another 3 more firefighters to the roster. No, the roster stays the same. We just, instead of 4 drops, we have 3 drops because 1 drop isn't going to travel anymore. They're staying in the canyon.
Right.
You know, we had a longer discussion on that, so I don't think I need to explain it, but I wanted to make sure for point of clarification that that was clear.
Got it.
all right.
Okay.
And then the capital plan, this is on pages 11 through 15. What I have above up here is kind of a summary of that plan. And here's a good example. You know, Mr. Chair, as you mentioned, you know, kind of like the election, how we may not have it every year, but budget a percentage of it. That's exactly how we develop and design our capital plan. As you can see, when you look across the numbers here, you know, we've got some years where, like in 23, we're proposing, you know, 2.39 million in capital expenditures. And so what we've done is we've budgeted a small percentage of that divided over, you know, 10 years. So we're constantly supplying that capital projects fund with monies. So when those large expenses come up, we don't see those ebbs and flows in our budget because those would be significant to our budget if just in 23 we decided to levy an additional 2.3 million for capital items. So that's where we've kind of taken that concept that you asked about and applied it to our budget on these more material items. Again, the capital plan is what it is. It's a plan. While you're adopting the operating budget, the capital plan itself is something that's more fluid. And as you know, based on our procurement policy, the items included in the capital plan are still brought to the board each time before purchase. So you will ultimately make the decision. While we say we're going to spend, you know, for fiscal year 22, you know, 300,000 on apparatus and vehicles, that's the plan. Things may change where some priorities may be switched around and money may be needed for another capital item at that time. But ultimately, that decision will be brought forth to the board when that decision is made.
You know, as you say that, as I look at the 2022 year, we have money allocated for the Station 4 Annex to remodel the upstairs. That's the annex, that's the building off to the side. To me, I'm looking at that, it's like that's a building that we use, we don't use, is that what we want to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of storage there, so there is some function to us right now, but we will evaluate it to make sure that, you know, we still are, as building costs start to lower here post-COVID and materials start to become more readily available and we spool up to replace Station 4, we'll make sure we make an informed decision on, hey, what do we need to keep that functional currently, but not over improve it so that when we knock it down,
Yeah.
it's a waste of money. So we will carefully look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the capital plan? So when you guys look at your page 10, you'll see we've got the projections, stretched out for 10 years. I've kind of condensed it down to look. Current budget we're in right now is an $18.79 million budget. The proposed budget's going to 19.7, which is a 5% increase. We've got just right at about a penny increase on the tax rate, in addition to the 5.4% assessed value increase to balance the budget. We're holding capital funding steady, and obviously that's still supported and meets, the plan within the capital plan. And then we look forward on our projections, and you can see we're projecting just under 5% the following year. And then in year 24, just kind of explain why you see a little bit more of a jump there to 5.8%. And that we're looking there is the debt service, adding in now new debt service on station construction. So that's why you're kind of seeing a bigger jump in that year from our projections. But again, we try to keep our growth around that 5% mark.
Yeah, I think what we see there, we see a total budget as you've projected out here for 2024 and as with the other years. But it gets back to when this district was proposing a bond to have all that immediate money, only to find out that, hey, you guys got to save that money and pay that. Well, that's what we're doing.
Right.
And so in doing so, I want to make sure that we are transparent enough that the public knows that that's exactly what we're doing, and we listen to what was coming from the public. And so we're making it happen, and it's not easy.
Right.
But that's how that's playing out.
Right, exactly. And we're securing that money, and we're setting it aside for these capital projects and things that, the voters had said they didn't want us to do through a bond.
Right.
So with that, we have a full proposed draft budget here of $19,736,145. A proposed tax rate of $2.488888.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yes, and again, like I mentioned before, when we first were looking at the budget, we're looking at well over $1 million increase. And to come in right at 5% and $940,000, I think is really a testament to the amount of work that staff and everybody's put into bringing forward a fiscally sound and responsible budget that, again, meets the needs, not only of next fiscal year, but also our future needs as we look at capital and financial reserves and things of that nature. So,
And the amount of mill rate that we're actually authorized to go to is 3 point something?
right, so the current cap is 325 is the cap that we're allowed to go to. There is some...
Is that fixed forever, or what, is that a moving thing?
So it has been fixed for a very long time. There is proposed legislation that will actually increase that cap rate to 337 and then 350 over the next 2 years. From what I hear from John Flynn with AFTA is it looks pretty promising that that's going to go through. The caveat to that is we're going to get a decrease on our commercial assessment from 18% to 17%, but the additional capacity we're going to see of the tax rate is going to well offset that.
But as I see the projection of the mill rate into the future, it stays way below that anyway.
Exactly. We're over here. We're not in any concern of coming near even today's cap. Correct.
Okay.
So with that, is there any further discussion from the board? Questions?
Well, I think most of all the board here has gone through the whole packet, highlighted, asked questions, or written down questions. And it is as time consuming for us to go through this and digest what we're seeing, but what I find difficult in reading this is, and I had called you about it to get a little clarification, was the fact that when I looked at salaries and how they play out, a salary was one number in one salary schedule, yet in the budget it's a different number. And explain to me again why that is.
Yes. So our wage scale is predicated upon what a person in that step, in that grade, meaning, for example, we'll use a random example that just came to me as fire chief. If you look at the wage scale, you look at a fire chief, step one is going to make X amount of dollars. That's predicated upon that person making that much, that pay rate for a full 12 months. You actually go in and look at the detail pages in the budget document, and let's you go to fire chief. Those numbers aren't going to correlate exactly because that fire chief didn't get hired on July 1st and work just those 12 months. There's that period of time where there may be, a month or two where they're at the old step before their anniversary and promote up to the next step. And so in this wage scale, it's just one step for 12 months, and that's the dollar amount. In the budget document, it could be two steps, or more than like, in most cases, it is two steps because they're starting off in step one, and then, so we're paying them at that rate up until January, and then now they go to step two, so they're getting paid at that rate for 6 months. So really, they're getting paid two different rates in that year, whereas the wage scale is just showing one rate.
So we're working with calendar years and fiscal years as it relates to salaries.
Anniversary year.
Anniversary years, I think is a better, yeah.
Okay, it's a better term then.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Good question.
We're looking, I'm looking.
You don't have any, it's okay.
No. The term contingency fund, and it came about as it related to PSPRS board. And if there wasn't funding for perhaps a certain medical exam, we would receive it from a contingency fund. Where is that contingency fund? And I didn't see that term anywhere in here.
So budgeting contingency funds is kind of one of those items that isn't really looked at. Let's take a step back here. So contingency funds are essentially governments or organizations, or personally, everybody can have one way of saying, I don't know what's going to happen, so I need to have money set aside for that, for the unknown. Old Murphy, when Murphy comes out. Well, because we as a district have done a good job on controlling our expenses, looking at alternative financing, growing our revenues, we have developed a very strong fund balance. If you remember, we were talking about the fund balance from last month. That fund balance essentially becomes our contingency fund as well. So we don't need to have a line item in our budget where we're budgeting and taxing the taxpayers for that money every year, because we've already received that money through other means and have it set aside. So if something does come up that's far outside our operating capacity within the budget, we have that reserve fund and those reserve funds that we can come forward to the board and ask for authorization to use those for that contingency type item.
Is there any other questions for Gabe on his budget presentation?
No, good explanation, and it's a euphemism for, you either call it a reserve or contingency or whatever you call it.
Right.
It comes out of the same pot.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if we didn't have the strong fund balance that we had, it may make sense. We may want to have a line item in there for contingency and levy those tax dollars for that unknown. But I think as stewards of taxpayer money, if we really want to tax and levy money from the taxpayers, we should have identified purposes for it. And we've been responsible and built up a savings, so to speak, that we don't need to ask them for that money every year. And if it gets to the point where it gets low, we may look at, budgeting reserves, but we're doing a really good job, and all of our projections are predicated upon us having a stable and strong reserve balance as we move forward. And so I don't see any need in the near future for that.
Okay. And Chief, in this new fiscal year coming up, and money's allocated for, or funding allocated for Fire Station 4, what are your projections for moving forward with that project? What is it we should be looking at that we have gained or accomplished?
Sure, so next fiscal year, what the goal is going to be is move into a feasibility study. Phase 1, there'll be 2 phases. We're already lined up to do the phase 1 feasibility study, and we're going to launch that probably at the beginning of the fiscal year. We'll complete that, we'll assess that, and then we'll go to a phase 2. So the second phase will be a lot more detailed. So those will be 2 expenditures, which are well within our budgetary appropriation now. And then secondary to that is when we'll start to line out construction timeline and what kind of design and what that's going to look like. So after those 2 phases are done and we realize, yes, we can move forward, then we'll start to look at some higher dollars and we'll be getting into the capital. So how long that'll take in the fiscal year, we'll launch and we'll just kind of follow phase 1, phase 2, and then we'll kind of look at what's the best timing to initiate the deeper dollars when it comes to the design and the engineering.
Okay, gotcha. And if I'm not mistaken, in the budget, I think you have money allocated within your line items as well as operations does for that.
Yeah, Gabe might be able to speak specifically where we've allocated that, but we do have some money set aside for that kind of development planning.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of the money for that development planning is in the capital budget. Just looking, I believe that's the only place we have it in this budget. Last year we had some allocated in, we do still have some allocated in the assistant chief budget for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabe, in this period of time, there are some construction issues and availability of lumber and all sorts of things that suddenly are not available. Construction projects have stopped cold, and down in the valley, for example, and farther south. I know that we're only in phase 1, phase 2, Chief, but however, I think we have to kind of look at, anticipate how long this is going to last as far as, because it could cost us. And I know of people, what have you, who are building large homes and having great difficulty. The labor's there, but the material's not, so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think that's why this fiscal year we moved to a slow roll. And I know that might not be the progress that I really wanted or the board wanted, but because of that issue, we've got to time this. Because what we don't want to do is start and then wait and cause an increase in the cost,
Right.
a significant increase. So we'll have to read the tea leaves on the timing, and just keep progressing slowly.
That's what they are, tea leaves too.
Okay, any other further questions for finance? Okay, then I believe based on what we're hearing here is that direction for the chief to work with finance to move forward in the fine tuning of the budget, moving towards that final budget approval. But at this point, we need a motion to either approve or not approve the tentative budget.
I believe we have it agendized later on in the meeting for that.
Okay. All right, so that would be the direction, to continue moving forward with the budgetary process in a positive manner, in that look for every nickel and dime that we can squeeze out of it to lower it as much as we can, realizing that it is, and that is the cost of providing the service to the members of our community and provide that professionalism that we do. So with that said, I believe that is the direction from the board. Okay? Okay. we jump back into the regular items, which were as a result of executive session, that we, reconvene into public session. The first item on that is the discussion, possible action, approval of the Administrative and Supportive Employees Association and International Association of Firefighters, Local 3690's Memorandum of Understanding. We did, in that discussion, in your presentation, Chief, I'll make the motion to approve the MOUs for both 3690 and the ASEA as submitted. We have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Good work with staff and labor and administration.
Yes, thank you, sir.
The next item on to discuss is the discussion possible action, which is the approval of the waiver of conflict of interest regarding agreements with Yavapai County through the Yavapai County Treasurer regarding lines of credit. As a result of executive session discussions, I'll make the motion to approve the waiver of conflict with Yavapai County and the Sedona Fire District.
A second.
You have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The third item is the discussion, possible action, approval of the Sedona Fire District's lease with Sedona Oak Creek Airport Authority. And I motion to have legal move forward as discussed in executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We've already done our budget workshop. Our regular business meeting as it stands is, we have any speakers from the public?
No, we do not.
No, we don't. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, discussion and possible actions. On the consent agenda is the April 20th, 2021 regular meeting minutes and the April 20, 2021 executive session minutes. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Financial report and updates. Director of Finance, Mr. Gabe Boldra.
Well, good evening again. We'll just let this warm up here. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. We've got the April financial report in your packet. Starting off with our revenue, you'll see tax levy revenue came in at $3,081,000. We're about $200,000 over where we projected to be at this point, so that's good. We're kind of ahead of our projections both for the month and for the year. Non-levy revenue was a little bit under. We brought in $147,000. We're $111,000 under budget. Two things kind of driving that. Well, we started kind of seeing wildland season pick up again. We haven't done any billing yet. We haven't gotten the billing out yet, so that's why we're seeing that variance there, as well as you mentioned before, kind of some of the transition with ambulance billing from internal to outsource. We're also under budget on ambulance revenue due to that kind of transition. So we will see a little bit of a budgetary impact. Not that we're not going to see that money, just timing we see that money. So I anticipate, within the next month or two, we'll start picking back up again on that. Happy to report on the expense side. All major expense categories were under budget. You see a personnel is at $1,097,000, which was $80,000 under budget. One of the things that's driving that, though, is some of those wildland deployment costs. Buildings and land at $22,139 is under budget by $10,900. Vehicles and equipment was over by a little bit. We expended $52,617, which was $3,400 over budget, and that was primarily due to fleet maintenance on that variance there. And then communication IT under budget by $26,000 and managerial under budget by $23,000. Looking at year-to-date, total revenues at $18,122,627. We are over budget by $786,000, with about $300,000 of that being related to property tax collection, and the remainder being our non-levy revenues, more specifically our wildland deployment revenues. Really been a big driver on that, as well as that grant revenue we received in back in July of last year. On the expense side, our total expenses are at $14,846,000. We are over budget by $396,000. A couple things I want to point out on that. One, personnel is over budget by $300,722. That is due to those wildland deployment wages. So while we have the additional revenue, we have some additional expense that offsets that. But fortunately, the revenue far exceeds the expenses. The other item that we have a large variance is on our managerial. We're $1,012,000, which is over budget by $307,000. And again, that's due to that same grant that we received that revenue back in July. So just for kind of a point of reference here, I mentioned we're over budget by $396,000. If I actually back out the wildland overage and that grant, so we're just looking at our actual operation of the district for this year, we're actually under budget by $600,000. So some of that is due to COVID. Obviously, we not only weren't traveling and weren't going out on a lot of training, some projects that were intended to get done around the district, have obviously been delayed as well. So we will start to, as things are opening up again, start to pick up on some of that, and some of it will probably carry over till next year. As far as percentage of expenses, at this point, we've expended 87% with 13% remaining. Again, realizing that 87% is being driven by those wildland deployment costs and those grant expenses that I explained. So while our percentage is over, about 4% over where we expect to be at this point in the fiscal year, it's all justified and we have the revenue to offset those additional expenses. Where our money's been going as far as a percentage, personnel, our highest is 84%, followed by operations and managerial at 6%, and communications at 4%. Finally, year-over-year cash position, you can see we ended the month at $14,033,000, which was right at about $2 million higher than we were last year at $12,034,000. Other assets increased from 20.7 to 21.3, and total liabilities actually increased from 26.9 to 29.3, and our PSPRS is really the biggest driver on that change on the liabilities, that growth, that unfunded. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Yeah, as we look at this last chart here, and you look at cash on hand and weigh it against the other assets and total liabilities, at what point is it advantageous to eliminate the balance of Fire Station 6?
Well, one of the things we look at is, right now, I'm just pulling up where the balance is on that. So right now we owe about $500,000 on that station loan.
And I'm asking, from the point of view, is it to our advantage to go into a new construction venture without any construction debt?
Right. And actually, based on our projections, that's exactly the formula that we built our projections on, is having that debt retired before we bring on new station debt. And so, when we look at paying off debt early, a lot of times we want to look at is what's our current interest rate that we're paying on the debt, right. What are we earning on our money, and looking at that. Given that, we're actually the county's actually done a really good job on investing the funds that we have there, and we've seen a good return. We're going to continue to pay this down under the normal schedule, and then look at being ready to have that paid off, though, either way, before we start the next station project.
All righty. Any other questions for Gabe? No, sir. Okay, with that, With that presentation completed, you want to make the motion, Gene, to approve the May financials?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the May financials.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of the motion? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Financials for May have been approved. Thank you very much. Okay, with that said, next item on the agenda is the fire chief's report. Chief Troutwine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. And looking at our 2021 monthly incident summary, I think definitely reflecting what we're filling out there in the field. But right now, currently in 2021, our year-to-date total is 17 calls. And in 2020, last time at this point, it was 1294. So we're seeing quite an interesting increase, but this is the trend. You know, we talked earlier that it's expected to be incredibly busy, you know, from Memorial Day on through the summer, fall. So, whereas that's not a surprise, I do want to bring one point of note to that. When you look at the rescue calls, how year-to-date, we've responded and managed 33 more than last year-to-date. And that's significant. And why would I bring that up? Well, when we do these trail rescues or an overturned vehicle out on the 525, it's personnel intensive and it takes time. So we might have a couple of units committed for 3 or 4 hours on some of these or more. So when we talk about district response and availability, hey, if we have certain calls that take a longer commitment of resources, that has a domino effect. So just something to note when we watch the trend. I anticipate over the next few months to see that line continue to rise. So, and then we're still in the ESO changeover to create the right filters to get the correct data to look at. That's why still we're finishing that off because we want to present correct data to the board. And then you'll see our responses by station. No surprises there. Although you look at Station 5, it was pretty busy this last month. Again, that's an area we're trying to shore up as we look at Oak Creek Canyon and we look at the amount of volume of people that are going in and out of that canyon right now. So with that, I do want to transition over to our Director of Administrative Services, Ira.
Thank you, Chief, Chairman, members of the board. We have some updates. So last month we talked about our Special Olympics torch run. So we talked about it in the future. We'll go ahead and talk about it in the past. There is a photo that we were able to do a snapshot of. Great event, good time had by all, great weather, excellent support from the district, getting out there and cheering on our participants. So we were really glad to find out about that event and be able to participate in it, and we'll look for more occasions to do that type of thing. One is restrictions get loosened a little bit, and then also just for these kind of outdoor activities where contact is low and we can be a presence and not have any kind of concerns of contact or contamination and things like that. That would affect our ability to do our job. For internal events, we do have benefits open enrollment going on, so it's your annual thing with your benefits. We've talked about some of our plans, changes and things going on that way internally. So Branda's organized that. We've been doing all of the information, doing that digitally, doing it with recordings, and having that go through our new Chrono system. So everything that's happening is going through the portal that we've been talking about, that combination of getting all of our software together with our timekeeping, with our payroll, and with our HR functions. And so this is our first go at that, and so so far so good. We find a few little glitches, little phrases that don't work right, things that kick you out or kick you back in, and Branda's been working diligently. So Branda Brothers, our payroll and benefits specialist, of course Keona Freeman in HR is the backup, and then all of us answering questions that way. So we're most of the way through. That gets done at the end of the month, and then we'll have everybody set up for the next plan year. Battalion Chief Jordan Baker has been working with getting us first off with our active shooter training. Gene McCarthy you knew about that. You had done that training also with your one of your organizations. We did that here a little over a year ago, and the follow-up to that active shooter drill training is a Stop the Bleed program. So it's something that they do regularly in training throughout the district. And so we're doing that for the administrative offices. We have our Stop the Bleed kits in the administrative building, so one on each floor. So should we have an incident and somebody is critically injured, there is a kit that's there to help that a bystander, that's where I'm going, would be able to assist the patient until emergency services can arrive. And so it's about a 2-hour program. We're blocking out some time in our schedule so that BC Baker can come in with another one of the Stop the Bleed teachers and go through that training with us, so we'll know what to do in the case of an emergency. So we're really looking forward to that. And as always, are truly grateful that they bring us into this training and programming. Our staffing updates, we really have the firefighter recruitment is moving forward, so we have a good list that came through the National Testing Center. We've gotten our applications in from the interested candidates. We have a decent-sized pool, and so we're going forward with that process. It will involve the interview process, having the candidates come on site. We'll do that with our physical distancing and masking protocols and make sure that we go through everything else business as usual. Training division and ed, Ms. Zulis will probably have a little bit more to say about that a little bit later. Another one that's not listed on there, but as we did go through, we had the resignation from our fire inspector. So we do have that position open, and HR is working with that division, and the fire marshal will probably report on that as well, looking at what our options are for filling that position and going forward. So doing that. I gave you a little bit of the update on our Chronos UKG update of the combining of that software. So we are in the full implementation of our benefits program that way, continuing with the rest of our HR protocols, trying to actually get our hiring for our firefighters as we go through that process to be completed through the portal. So all the applications will be uploaded that way, all of their information, their tax information, background checks, those things will all be processed through this system. So we're excited to move forward with that process. We're also looking at an appraisal, so your annual review. There's a function within the system to do that, which will highly automate something that's maybe a dreaded thing to have to do annually, and it's manually tracked right now. So HR has to go and pull from personnel records in a spreadsheet what everybody's anniversary dates are for when their annual appraisal is due, and then update by email or conversation with their supervisor and go through. Now the supervisor has to schedule it, and then they have to return the information, and yeah, you get it. So we're really excited to get that automated and can't happen fast enough. Really, though, we are going to take our time so we can make it right. You have in your packet the spreadsheet on the surplus spending. We just want to keep you up to date. There have been a few updates to that spreadsheet, just kind of letting you know product that have come in. The final amount, so where we went in was what we budgeted for or predicted, and then where we actually spent. In some cases, we went ahead and did those things that we talked about of bumping up some capital items, buying them now so that we can clear up the budget, save some money, give us some more bandwidth for those asks that we had. And so that went well. So we've got some tracking in the building area that we want to complete so that you can see that a little better, what that project looks like. Right now, we were spending out of 3 budget lines for them, and so we want to make sure that we've accounted for everything, put it in their proper categories so it makes sense as you review that next month. We'll have that cleaned up a little bit more. But again, thank you for allowing that spending on these projects because it's really been wonderful to be able to accomplish those items. Getting into my mental health moment, which is the last thing I always close it out with. We do that, and May is Mental Health Month. Apparently, it has been celebrated since 1949 in this country as the month for mental health awareness to try to reduce the stigma attached to declaring and feeling and getting help for an illness that really ought to be treated just as normally and just as critically as if you were sick. There is a very amusing video out there that you might be able to YouTube and look up that talks about how the things that we say to people who are talking about a mental illness or a mental impairment of some kind, distress, anxiety, depression, that you wouldn't say any of these things to a person having a heart attack, somebody choking, somebody having an asthma attack, that you would never say the things that we say to people who are saying, I'm depressed. You would never tell them to just get over it. You'd never tell them to try yoga. Now, yoga is very beneficial if you have anxiety, but it can be presented in a way that's helpful instead of minimizing somebody's illness. And so taking a look at those ideas, reducing the stigma is really just the message. Kind of done that a couple months in a row of making sure that you can feel like you can address it. It is an illness. It has been acknowledged as one since 1949, that we can look at it and say is no different than a broken arm or strained knee. We can take care of it in that manner and help each other. So get some resources, take care of yourself, give yourself a break, and understand that you're not alone. And that is the end of my report, but I will take your questions and comments now. Yes, Mr. McCarthy.
Yes, Heidi. Just for your information and the rest of the folks here, I'm working on a pipe dream. And the pipe dream has to do, it could be 6 months, could be a year, but to bring together veterans, firefighters, paramedics, law enforcement, and those who are first responders into a group called Sheepdog Fellowship. And that's to look at PTS demons. And most of you know here that you harbor demons you can't hear, and there aren't voices in your head, but they tend to fill up your emotional cup. That affects family and work and so on. So my plan is to bring that together here in Sedona. The concept, I'm working with a group out of Prescott right now who's doing much the same thing, so I'm not reinventing any wheels. But you'll know more about it probably in the coming months, if not early next year.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding that. We had a phone conversation a couple last weeks about that and got the little flyer for the information. A lot of our members do live in the Prescott area, so it's something that they could seek out and look for that resource. The common factor between all of those, well, one, the name of it is super, but the common factor of all of those organizations is that a post-traumatic stress disorder or just a post-traumatic stress is common in all of those groups. And so getting that collaboration and letting them know that kind of all our heroes come together and can admit that this is something that needs to be treated and we can do something about it, and recognizing it's the first thing. So thank you so much for your commitment to that, because that's going to be really useful here, I believe.
Heidi, you mentioned an inspector vacancy.
Yes.
And are we leaning towards more of an internal promotional process, or are we going external for a non-firefighter from Sedona? Or
so the fire chief will probably want to speak to that.
Sure, yeah. Our first option is an internal, some internal movement for that, although and John can give more update if he has it, but we're finishing off the job description to make sure the classification's clean. And then we're going to inquire, is there anyone that's interested? And then that will kind of gauge whether we need to go outside or inside. But right now we're hearing there might be 2 or 3 people interested, which is exciting, and I think it'd be great. So we're working on finishing that off.
Yeah, it may be a great stepping stone for those aspiring to the position of captain that are in the firefighter or engineer ranks as a promotion to the captain position.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're looking at as we look at CRRs, how we structure it for if you go on as inspector and movement and progression, and how that benefits your career in the district. So we're excited to make some improvements there.
Okay, super. And along with the hires, how are we doing with the IT position and mechanics position? Again, I don't know if it's more you or the chief.
I'll defer to the chief.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll defer to Heidi.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, sounds good.
So
Good news.
the IT, we're kind of where we're on that is we're finishing up this RFP assessment, and then in parallel, we have we're working on some classification studies, and what the decision was is, I think it came up earlier, what contract are the executives under? Well, there isn't a contract. So another thing we've noted with the executives is how clean are the classifications are updated, and they have been updated sometimes. So with the director of admin, with the assistant chief, full division chiefs, we're doing classification studies to clean those up. The second phase of that classification is to look at IT, make sure we're clean on all those. So in parallel with our RFP, looking at all the infrastructure, we're also moving towards a classification to make sure when we refly that position and move towards it, part of that assessment is looking at personnel and what kind of staffing we need. In addition, we'll clean those classifications up, then we can relaunch again. Because we decided to step a couple steps back to make sure that we're going to do it right, because we had a couple of challenges there. So, and then in the interim, we also, I know with that short staffing, we're also looking at how can we outsource a couple of these projects now to help the staff to get through it. So we're also, that's a tertiary thing I suppose we're looking at right now.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, in line with your mental health month, there was an outstanding recognition letter from the public about one of our own that responded to a call. And and I'm sure you'll review it once we get to that point, but makes you very proud that we have that type of person in our midst that can respond to that and do exactly what they're supposed to do. So, and we'll cover that when we get to it. Thank you, Heidi, for your presentation.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, Chief?
Thank you, Heidi. Well, let's go to operations, Assistant Chief Coyle.
Good evening.
Hey, Chief Coyle, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Get
All
going.
right. Yeah, roger that. Hey, so COVID update. I'll hit the highlights. The infection rate in Coconino County is down. The infection rate, or the number of cases per 100,000, down significantly in Coconino County, up in Yavapai County, but the infection rate in the state is now below 1. So that trend that we want to see is kind of locked in there. And the world is not doing great, but the United States is doing really good as far as the number of infected. And right now, in Coconino County, the number of people with their first vaccination dose is 48.6%, and Yavapai County it's 40%. So Yavapai County is still lagging behind Coconino County, but they're both still moving up at about the same, increased by about 7%. Talked earlier about the CDC guidance for fully vaccinated, and the other big news in the COVID realm is that Pfizer approved, or the FDA approved the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for 12 and up. So significant operational events are, basically, the kind of the question's gone from, or the conversation has gone with the battalion chiefs from, what's the most appropriate apparatus to send to calls to a number of times a week. I hope we have an apparatus to send to a call, and specifically ambulances. It's just been getting that busy in certain surges. So, we're working together to make sure we're being as efficient, as effective as possible with that. It includes, pulling in backup units from our neighbors and us providing them backup units, because that's the only way that the system's going to work. But that right there is just, as SEDONA gets busier and busier, and traffic, adds to delays and adds to difficulty in getting backups and stuff there, it just continues to be a challenge. The other stuff that's been going on is that ADOT is continuing to move forward with their projects in Oak Creek Canyon. They sent some information on the first phase of that project, which is some clearing rock fall up at the northern end of the canyon, to the homeowners and the business owners in that area. And they have been really good about keeping us informed. We have frequent meetings, all the public safety partners. So hats off to them for that. The Forest Service has also been very responsive, and every 2 weeks we're having meetings with all the law enforcement agencies and the Forest Service about the different issues that we're seeing in not just SEDONA, but basically in the whole Red Rock area. So Actually, it's primarily Camp Verde and us that are discussing the issues, but you know, it's been great. They've moved forward on some of the items that we've asked them to move forward on, and we're continuing to work together. So that is especially with that frequency of those meetings, that's a positive step, I think, towards us being able to come up with the most efficient solution we can, given the constraints. And so I just wanted to kind of acknowledge them for doing that. Well, Ed's going to say that, so I won't even say it. Wildland outlook. So it's kind of interesting. The National Weather Service put up a graphic about it's interesting to me, it may not be interesting to you, but about the drought relative to large fires. And when you look at the Wallow fire, the slide fires on there, you know, we are at about 4 times the drought that we were during those 2 events right now. So that's the bad part. The ERCs right now, so the energy release component is what measures the likelihood that stuff's going to burn. It's near to slightly above normal for this time of year. So we were well above normal. Those cooling days we've had lately kind of brought us back down. The temperature and precipitation outlooks, drier than average across the eastern side of the state, and pretty much right over us. So we're right on the border of that, and near to normal, drier than normal and near to normal precipitation. Starts. I'm not saying this very well. In May, drier than normal, going to near normal in June, and then some of the signals are saying that we're going to have an earlier onset to the monsoon, slightly earlier, and a stronger, which here's hoping. Above normal temperatures, though, throughout that whole period. And the likelihood of significant large fires is above normal across all the forecast area in Arizona. So that's from now on. And, in the near term, the next 3 or 4 days, there's going to be a pretty significant wind event. And the conditions are right. Most of the areas are in phase 1 restrictions of force in our area, but it's just going to take one careless act to probably have a fire get pretty big in the next few days. So it's up to us as humans to make sure we don't do that. All right, moving on. GIS update. Emily's been working with the UAS program to get some tools in it's called Collector, Survey 123, to document the different flight requirements. At the same time, the UAS group has been working with Emily to provide her some aerial pictures to update our quick look map books and update the automated map books that we have on all of our phones. So that's pretty cool. And he has revamped our maps, sent them out for reviews, and got some excellent comments back, positive comments on the work she's done and some little tweaks. So we're looking to continue to work on making that better. And just continue to work on training. We talked before about the phase 2 or the advanced 911. That's not what it's called. Next generation 911. And she's continuing to work on the trainings and everything necessary to be prepared to integrate the Sedona Fire District into that model when it comes live. Telecom, the biggest issue that telecom's been facing with, other than the fact that it's still out on an FMLA related absence, is that they had 5 microwave links go down due to software issues, and that took a significant amount of time for Bob mostly to get those back up. Kudos to Bob and to Jeremy. We didn't have any interruptions of service during that time. As far as critical service goes, we did have some transient outages of phones and some internet issues and stuff, but nothing that's mission essential. And then finally, during the next month, it's our intent to get those microwave links, the issues corrected in a more permanent fix by moving 3 of the dishes, which is a big lift. And then also to work on the Sedona Fire radio upgrade program. So that was as fast as I could do it. Hopefully that's fast enough. I would welcome any.
Do we have any questions for Chief Coyle? No. Okay. And Chief Coyle, Chief Troutwine described the status we're in as far as lifting some of the CDC requirements for face masks and so on. How are we looking as it stands within our department? I mean, obviously you concur with the chief, but do you have any additional information on that?
I can tell you that when we got the CDC guidance, when the CDC released the guidance, and there'd been talk, especially when CDC released the guidance, then I sent an email to the chief and to Chief Mazzoulis saying that I'd like to talk about it Monday in the management meeting, and the chief, like we've done the whole way, said, hey, we're anchored in the CDC guidance, so yeah, let's talk about it, but he supports aligning with their guidance. So Monday at the leadership meeting, we just want to make sure that everyone was on the same page, and we kicked it around for a little bit, came up with an approach to implementing that guidance, and made sure that the BCs had any questions that they had at that time answered, because they're the ones that have to field it to the crews. And frankly, 24-hour crews are the ones with the most unique situations. And okay, so what does that mean for eating if 4 of the people have been vaccinated and 1 of them haven't? How do we deal with that? So we walked through all those issues, and then we sent out an email letting everybody know that the standard is still, it's kind of a distinction, right? The policy is still wear masks. There's an exception to that policy if you're fully vaccinated and you have your card on file, and this is what that exception is. So that's the way we phrased it. And then we also reminded people that we've done everything as an organization I think we should to provide guidance and education and give everybody all of the information about the masks, about vaccinations. At the end of the day, it's an individual decision. So while this makes it less inconvenient for people that are masked if they choose, that are fully vaccinated if they choose to remove their masks. If they decide, well, I'm going to keep my mask on until we get all the way through this deal, or somebody may have chosen not to get vaccinated. We also made it clear in there that that's okay too, and that we expected everyone. There's no disparate treatment of anybody, no matter what position they took. So I feel like leadership, the chief, all of us have been in alignment. Labor's in that conversation, made sure that we had their buy-in before we move forward. And we're just like we kind of eased into this big mess. We're easing out of it, but we're allowing people. We're making sure that we follow OSHA guidelines to provide a workplace free of known hazards, and COVID-19 has been identified as a known hazard. At the same time, recognizing that people still have individual choice, and that choice just may mean that they need to be wearing their masks longer. That's how we pretty much ended up. So we're all in lockstep, I guess, is the short version. But that's how we got there.
Okie doke. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions for Chief Coyle? No. Chief, thank you. Chief Troutman?
Yes, thanks, Chief Coyle. Let's go to Community Risk Reduction Division Chief John Davis.
Board members, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Community risk reduction. Last month in community risk reduction, we did a little over 180 inspections, 110 fire and life safety systems. Company inspections for the first quarter of 2021 was 144 inspections, 62 plan reviews, another busy month in plan reviews. We did have a couple of small fires. One was a cooking fire, another one was a fire in a propane barbecue grill. Both of those were minor in nature. This month's, one thing I did want to talk to you about, we did go into stage 1 fire restrictions, as Chief Coyle mentioned. We did that last Friday. Every Monday we have Northern Arizona fire restrictions call. Involves fire departments, the U.S. Forest Service, Weather Service, county emergency managers, and the consensus was to move into stage 1 fire restrictions as of last Friday. As at Monday's meeting yesterday, the general consensus is based on the current and expected conditions, we are likely looking at stage 2 fire restrictions sometime around the Memorial Day weekend. So those are probably, I guess I would say at this point, imminent. but the timing as of today is not it's not set yet. But we are approaching the metrics to move into stage 2 fire restrictions. That leads into my safety message this month. You know, one of the questions we get very often is, hey, if there's a wildfire, what are we going to do for evacuations? And, you know, I think one of the common misconceptions is that the fire department is going to be handling those evacuations. And so I'm always very diligent in educating the public that, you know, if there's a fire, we're probably going to be busy fighting that fire. And essentially the sheriff's offices are in charge of the evacuation procedures. The good news is that all of the sheriff's offices in Arizona have subscribed to the Ready, Set, Go model. And basically it's a three-stage evacuation process. There's an online a website that you can go to. It's called readyforwildfire.org. So that, if you go to that website, it spells out the process, the ready, the set, to go. What can you do to get ready? Well, you can create defensible space around your house. You can keep your gutters and rows clean, leaves and other vegetable debris, vegetation. You can develop a written evacuation plan. It helps you plan out when the sheriff says, hey, we're looking at an imminent evacuation in 4 hours. You go grab your written plan and say, oh yeah, I've got it. Don't forget the pets. Don't forget my pills. Don't forget all of our important papers. And you can get ready to go and maintain your situational awareness during that time. And then when the sheriff comes to you and says, hey, it's time to go now, you've got all of your important documents, your house is as prepared as it can be, and you have your 2 or 3 evacuation routes, and you know that based on the location of the fire, it's going to be best for me to go out 179 or whatever the situation dictates. So I would highly encourage everyone to visit readyforwildfire.org. They've got some nice toolkits on there that can help you work through the process, plan your evacuation kit, and help you get ready for the day that we hope never comes, when the sheriff says, hey, it's time to go, you got to leave your house. Anyway, that's the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Out now here, phase 1 fire restrictions. What are the basic restrictions?
So stage 1 fire restrictions are basically any solid fuel open flame, not prohibited, or is prohibited, excuse me. There are some exceptions to that. There's a quirk in that where you can still have campfires in Forest Service designated recreation areas in the provided fire ring. So even though we're in stage 1 restrictions and you can't have an open campfire anywhere else, up in the canyon, in the campgrounds, in those fire pits, they still allow those. So what I tell people is typically any fire during stage 1, any fire that produces sparks or embers and cannot be immediately put out without residual burning typically aren't allowed. Propane grills, decorative lanterns, stuff like that don't produce sparks and embers, they can be turned off immediately without any residual burning, those are allowed. So that's kind of stage 1 in a brief overview. But even though most solid fuel fires are prohibited, there is still a quirk where they're allowed through stage 1 in designated Forest Service recreation sites in the fire ring.
This is Gene McCarthy. During stage 1, I had some concerns
about down in the village area in Yavapai County, actually outside of the district, I believe. And that is off of Beaver Flat Road. Beaver Flat Road has a rural shooting range. It'd be very logical that we shouldn't be shooting tracer rounds, but at that range, it's often used by locals. And it's my understanding that falls within the Forest Service. Am I correct in that?
I don't know whose jurisdiction that falls under, to be quite honest with you. I do know that Yavapai County's Stage 1 fire restrictions prohibit prohibit the discharge of firearms.
Yeah, because it hasn't been posted since the restrictions were put in place. And I don't recall in any previous fire restrictions that it has been posted and so on. So if it at all possible, if you could put me in touch with a point of contact, that'd be helpful, as I have events planned at that location.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research and find out whether that's Forest Service or the county, and I will let you know.
Mr. McCarthy, sorry, this is Ed Mazulis. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you speaking of the shooting area essentially right at the top of the hill when you turn on the Beaverhead Flat from 179?
That's correct, on the south side of the road.
It's my understanding it's Forest Service, but we do respond to that area, but I don't know if we have jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Chief Trotwine?
Okay, EMS training and fleet, Division Chief Ed Mazulis.
All right, EMS activities and updates for this month. A bulk of my hours have been continuing to work with the new physicians group at NAH to fine-tune their understanding of our established protocols. We've had, as you've seen, an increase in call volume, and our crews and battalions have been doing a great job of managing resources and helping educate some of the new nurses and doctors why we transport where we do and when. And the hospital liaison we have, Debbie Vertick, has been very helpful in assisting us with that. Billing transition is ongoing. It's a little bit behind schedule because of some staffing changes at the company, but everything's on track and they're communicating well with us. I hope to have a really good report on how it's going at the next board meeting. Fleet activities. Mike continues to just kick butt. We had some emergent repairs that popped up, so it slowed getting the refurbed ambulance in service. So it's a couple weeks behind schedule, but he's still getting on it as he can. As you can see, we continue to train in all of our disciplines. Mike reported out on the hours. If you have any questions on those, I'll answer them. Sean Foster completed degree, and thing I'm most excited about is via training, we're going to do a safety stand down in June, and it is the theme is it's a nationally adopted theme, and it's a focus on rehabbing in the fire service. If we have a large incident, a lot of times we'll have an area where the firefighters can rehabilitate and get water and cool down. But the focus of this stand down, this safety stand down, is to really focus on the entirety of rehab, not only on the fire ground, but mentally and physically off the fire ground. With every call requires rehab is kind of the theme, and it might tax you mentally, it might tax you physically, but we need to focus on those tools that will assist us in staying safe and ready to do our job. And that's my report. Any questions?
This is Gene McCarthy. No question, a comment, and a comment of appreciation. Last Saturday, my wife suffered chest pain, and she's like me, a senior, and so I spent years as a paramedic. However, based on her age and so on and so forth, I thought it was prudent to call, and I did. And the crew from Station 3 responded. I stood back and observed. Very professional, pleasant, asked the right questions, all I would expect, PQRST. And I just wanted to make the comment that we don't often have the opportunity to actually see these folks in action. And as a former responder, what have you, I have nothing but praise. And they're just one of many in this district who provide that service. And Chief, please extend my appreciation to the shift. And I don't have a shift calendar anymore. I think I need one. And to the station that responded on Saturday evening. And again, thank you.
Well, and thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it, and I will pass on a thank you to the crew.
Thank you, Chief. And Jean, on behalf of the board, we wish her well and hope she recovers soon.
He's fine.
Okay, super. Chief Troutman.
Great, thank you, Chief Missoula. So to finish off the chief's report, strategic plan, we are moving along quite well. I believe we have one more goal to just, goal and strategy and action items to go back over one and a half goals. Then we're ready to launch that update, so you'll be hearing more on that. We talked a little about Station 4 earlier. You can see our purchase orders. We've had a handful of different purchase orders where we acquired some turnouts, our AC charging system, our medic class and server replacement, and ammo 3 mount. And then, once again, our media outreach, you can see we continue to have an impact there. And I actually, from the community, get a lot of positive comments on that. Hey, thanks for putting the media information out, and our battalion chiefs do an outstanding job of posting really valuable information. And I think we do have subscribers that track that carefully and use that. So, an attaboy to the BCs, and you can see the engagement really in the reach that we have. And then the last thing is the thank you letter, again, that Chairman Soto noted to Engineer Kai Kinchelo, who, and it's an outstanding letter. And again, it's really the tip of the iceberg on the service that's happening day to day, right? And we're not, every resident doesn't take the time to write a nice letter like that, but we are impacting the community. We are accomplishing our mission, and we're doing it to best advantage and to great effect. So I think that's a great highlight, and our hat goes off to our fantastic engineer who did an amazing job really on this incident. So with that, are there any questions, comments from the board?
Chief, just a quick update for Fire Station 4. I'm sorry, Fire Station 3 in the village. Have they completed their air conditioning upgrade, or is that still underway?
Chief Paul, you're still online. Do you have an update on the HVAC system at 3? I believe that is complete, but...
Yes, sir, you're correct. It's complete.
Yeah, great, thank you. And also, I have the privilege of working with Kai on the PSPRS board, and he's an outstanding young man. So I would expect nothing less than what was mentioned here.
Yeah, get the nominations in, SFD staff. We have an award every year.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chief, for your report overall. Next item on the agenda is discussion possible action of the proposed 2022 Sedona Fire District's budget, board and staff discussion, approval to publish. Gabe and Chief Troutwine.
All right. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we've spent the better part of the last couple of months working on budget. I believe and hope that we've answered all the board's questions regarding the proposed budget, and at this point, asking for tentative adoption of the FY22 budget for Sedona Fire District.
Okay. Any other questions for Gabe or the Chief as it relates to the budget? Okay, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve or adopt the tentative budget as proposed and continue to adjust where needed, working in a downwards direction towards the approved budget for 21-22.
Authorize the publication.
And authorizing the publication of such. Okay? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Then it is approved for publication.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. We're getting near the end, guys. Hang on. Our last item on the agenda is discussion of the board members' fire district-related activities since our last board meeting. And this is where we get a chance to just inform the public of our actions or interactions with the district and the members of our community as it relates to the fire district. Al, would you like to go first here?
Well, I don't have much, using my own Facebook links to carry on the fire district's message about the change in status of fire restrictions, and being involved in what's going on up at the airport and seeing the different activities up there. It's a very, very busy airport.
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. Janet, anything to add for this month?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Gene? Well, I'm reasonably active in my neighborhood. I'm the nosy neighbor. And as the nosy neighbor, I often send out emails and that sort of thing to people throughout the Jacks Canyon area. And I'm going to send out one more. And for you, John, readyforwildfire.org. And send that out to my neighbors, maybe, so that if they choose, they can take a look at it. Because what affects one affects all. So, other than that, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that.
All right. And lastly, from myself, it's been a work in progress as it relates to some of these contractual items that are still just about there. Working with the chief, working with legal with Bill Whittington and his firm, and at the same time working just to stay abreast of what's going on with the budget and just working with Gabe. I've made a few phone calls there as well as the chief when I had questions. So it's imperative that we stay engaged, and even with that, I had a chance to fit in a little bit of a vacation. So it is good to get back in the game and jump back. So with that said, thank you all for the hard work as it related to the budget, as it relates to the all the other things that we've been busy with, and it's been a busy time, and look forward to getting past this COVID issue as we move forward. So with that said, this meeting is adjourned.